your role will connect resources to solution providers and grassroots solution providers that you, number one, know to be genuine, number two, know to be culturally competent. And I know the specific history you're speaking about because my family moved to New Cross in 1981, just before the fire. I went to Kenda Primary. I went to Addie and Stanhope in Deptford. I'm aware of the docks where you've got the chain right at the front of the market, which is where our ancestors were bought and catalogued as property as they were just passing through. So it's very important that we have someone as an African Caribbean candidate who understands uniquely from the grassroots up what the problems are on the ground, what needs to be done, who the solution providers are, but also understands the needs of the wider community as well. Because I think this is something that often gets looked at when African Caribbean candidates step up. Oh, you're only for Black people, which we've never done at any stage of being in the country as professionals. You would have had no necessary pick and choose of the young people that you were serving who were escaping violence. And you understand there are cross-cutting themes that go across all ethnicities. However, there are very important distinctions to be made when it comes to African Caribbeans that don't get met when it comes to policies like benign neglect. So I'll just touch on the recent deployment of this policy of benign neglect very quickly, which a lot of us recognize as the gaslighting from the Conservative Party, which is to recognize a problem and just look at it and say, the problem will solve itself. We don't need to acknowledge it. We don't need to apply resources. And when we think about the fallout from a murder, not only the emotional and spiritual format in the void of that life that hits communities and families, but the economic fallout of a murder that you rightly identified was 1.7 million. I was still under the impression that it was 1.4 million end to end. But in that 1.7 million, you know that you could hit 30 grassroots organizations on the ground to run robust programs that created wraparound care for young people. And we're not just talking about the early intervention of rites of passage or supplementary schools. We're talking right across the board in terms of youth advocacy, organizations like Black Child Agenda and taking positive steps, and even for them to be able to train staff to more robustly grow out their services. These are immense amounts of money that are being wasted on lives that are being wasted. So I just want the listening audience to very much understand the importance of voting in a candidate that's truly representative of our interests. So could you speak a little bit as to your experience with delivery partners on the ground?
So first thing, I'll start off by saying I'm also a part of the management committee on the Garvey Village. So regardless of politics, the work was getting done regardless. So that's just something I want to make clear there. So people don't get confused and think, oh, the work will only get done if you get voted in. We are doing the work. We are there. If we didn't lose our building in Catford, we would have still had the after school club and had the domino club for the elderly people to come in and still be giving them their food and offering them all the care that they needed. But sadly, there was no one there to speak up for our building, and the building was taken away. So now the people in the community have nowhere to go. From working in the borough for 10 years on the front line, there's a lot of grassroots organization doing some amazing work. But what happens is they struggle to survive when it comes to payment by results. Not because they can't deliver the results. It's about having that surplus to be able to pay the staff until they are paid. And a lot of the time after you send an invoice, it could take another 2 to 3 months for that invoice to be paid. So a lot of the small organizations are then forced out of the area because they're not able to sustain the payment by results. That was the first thing that happened to them. The next thing that happened to them was they were either forced into the council So once they go into the council, they then have to follow the council rules and all the bureaucracy that comes with that and the politics. So all that authentic work that they were doing outside is all gone out the window. Because now you're now ticking targets. They're now asking you to see 1,000 young people for £500 and £1,000, which they know is not achievable. So what people then tend to do is be ticking boxes instead of doing that quality work that they were doing before from the heart, because now they're under pressure to hit stats that are unachievable. And it's the same thing when we look at the young kids on the borough that are being medicated. A lot of them are being diagnosed with acute mental health and being told that they've got ADHD, Tourette's, autism, Asperger's, and the family are being given medication, but not given what was once called a statement, now called an EHCP plan, which is a protection for the young people to stop them being excluded from school. They could also, once you've got the HCP plan, have the money released to have a mentor or support worker in the school to support that young person from being excluded. And also management moves are not being looked at. So instead of a young person getting a management move where they could have a fresh start in another school, they're being excluded, sent to a people referral unit, and then fast-tracked into the criminal justice system. And these are the same young people that we will see being incarcerated and indoctrinated and then being read scriptures that they don't understand. And people are then surprised how we've got homegrown terrorists coming out of prison, which were these same young people that were fast-tracked through school, not learning how to read or write. There's actually a school on Bromley Road where the young people go there from 6 years old. And at lunchtime, they'll be looking through the fence. And when they look through the fence, the other young people that are in secondary school are through the other side of the fence. So the young person knows from 6 years old, I will never be going to a mainstream school. I'll be going over there with the young boys that's jumping on the teacher's back and being given hot chocolate with lots of sugar in it to keep them calm in the class. So we need to look at the amount of young people's lives that are being destroyed before it's even started. And unless we've got grassroots organizations that know the people, know the area, we will continue to look at number crunching happening where there's no actual work being done with young people. Instead, they could pump out these figures, send them back to the Home Office and the Mayor's Office and say, oh, look at what good work we've done. When really, what have you really done? Engage with no one. All you've done is made up some stats and put them out. And it's the same thing with other stuff where you look at, when we look at the housing in the borough, which is something that I'm looking to champion. They've got these massive skyscrapers coming up all across the borough where there used to be green space and blocking out the natural light to people that have lived there 30, 40, 50 years. So now you get no natural light coming into your house. It's also blocking the wind. So when people are wondering why the toxic air is so much in certain parts of the borough, you have to look at the buildings that's blocking the carbon dioxide. And it's about 1 or 2 social housing on each floor. But when they're doing the planning permission, they're telling you, oh, don't worry, we're going to have 30 to 40% social housing or affordable housing. But affordable to who? Because a part of New Cross is Telegraph Hill. And Telegraph Hill is as if you're living in Chelsea. Yep. So when they're saying affordable housing, to which part of Telegraph Hill? This is what we need to find out. And these are things the residents are asking. Affordable to which part of the street? Because I can't afford to live in there. And especially if something happens, especially with the lockdown, a lot of people ending up on benefits. Your universal credit is not going to cover that property. So you will then become homeless and you'll be told that you've made yourself intentionally homeless. So that means for the rest of your life, you'll not be entitled to another council property. No fault of your own, but because you were forced to move into a property that was unaffordable, not affordable, unaffordable for the normal London living wage. Yeah. So we need to look at the language that these people are using and break it down for the community, so the community are not tricked into taking options that look glossy, like glassy buildings, because those glassy buildings are getting a lot of people into the homeless shelter with their children.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've seen that gentrification time and time again. I don't want to leave the issue of youth solutions so quickly just yet, but I'm really glad that you've introduced a fully connected picture that shows from the family environment and the disruptions that can happen that will all lead to that kind of youth displacement, because we don't really ask the questions and investigate. And as you've made it plain, if we're looking at results-based funding, where was this criteria actually drawn up? What consultation was had with the beneficiaries of that funding? Where was the representation from the African Caribbean community? And we know that it doesn't really take place. We're outside of those rooms when those decisions are made. And I know that we've both been down to the mayor's office and consulted how many times, but how many of those recommendations were taken up by Khan's mayor's office, who's been in since May 2016?